It was just past dawn. The earth was still cool with morning mist, and the sun's golden light crept gently across the forest floor. Amid the silence, the faint sound of footsteps approached the grove where Gautam Buddha was seated beneath a Bodhi tree. A young man, no more than 25, stopped at a respectful distance. His shoulders slouched beneath the weight of emotions too complex for words: anger, frustration, guilt. Buddha opened his eyes. The man bowed deeply and spoke. "Master, I've tried to be calm. But every time someone disrespects me, I react. I lash out. Then I regret it. How can I stop?" Buddha studied him for a moment and then said, "Before I answer, let me tell you a story. Not about a monk, but a king." The young man knelt to listen. "Once," Buddha began, "there was a mighty king known across the land for his wealth, wisdom in war, and command of armies. But despite his power, the king had one great weakness: his emotions ruled him like a tyrant rules a servant." The young man listened closely, as birds chirped quietly overhead. One summer, this king traveled to a neighboring kingdom for a royal banquet. The host, a kind and generous ruler, prepared a feast like none other: silver platters, sweet fruits, fragrant rice, spiced lentils. Servants moved like dancers, pouring drinks and offering dishes with bowed heads. The young man's brow furrowed. "It sounds perfect." It was, Buddha nodded. Until a small moment unraveled everything. The master paused, letting silence do its work. When the soup was served, the visiting king dipped his spoon and froze. There, floating at the surface, was a single dead fly. The young man grimaced. He slammed his spoon down. The hall went quiet. "How dare you?" he bellowed. "Is this how you welcome me?" He demanded that the cook be punished. That the dish be replaced. That apologies be made. "And the host?" the young man asked. The Buddha smiled faintly. The host did not flinch. He raised his hand calmly and said, "O great king, it is not the fly that has spoiled your appetite. It is your reaction to it." The young man blinked, stunned by the simplicity. The room remained silent, Buddha said. But something changed in the king. For the first time, he heard truth inside words instead of offense. The breeze rustled through the trees. And from that day on, Buddha continued, the king began to observe himself more than he judged others. He learned that emotional control was not weakness, but mastery. The young man sat still, letting the story settle like dust after a storm. His lips parted, then closed again. Finally, he spoke. "I've been the king," he whispered. "Not in wealth, but in reaction." Buddha gave a gentle nod. "Most of us are. Not because we are evil, but because we are unaware." The forest around them seemed to still in agreement. The young man looked down at his hands. "So I just watch myself. That's it?" "You begin by watching," Buddha said. "Not to judge. Not to suppress. But to see. Anger is like a spark. If you pause before feeding it, it dies. If you fan it with reaction, it becomes a wildfire." The young man's brow furrowed. "But the feeling comes so fast." "Yes," Buddha said. "But the reaction is not the feeling. Reaction is a choice, often made too quickly. Mindfulness creates a space between the emotion and the decision. In that space, you regain your freedom." The young man fell silent again. Then, with a nervous breath, he asked, "Has anyone ever done that? Truly learned to stop reacting?" Buddha smiled. "Let me tell you about someone who tried. His name was Michael." Michael, Buddha began, was a young man from another land in another time. But his struggle was the same as yours. He gestured gently to the listening disciple, who now leaned in with reverence. Michael was brilliant, but burdened. He had ambition, talent, and a good heart, but every time someone criticized him, misunderstood him, or disappointed him, he reacted. Harsh words. Cold silences. Slammed doors. Each reaction left a crack in his relationships. He wanted to love, Buddha continued, but his emotions got in the way. He wanted to grow, but his impulses kept holding him back. One day, after a bitter fight with a friend, Michael sat alone in his room. Angry. Guilty. Tired of the cycle. He opened his journal and wrote just one question: what if I stop reacting? From that moment, Michael's path shifted, not instantly, but intentionally. He began reading about mindfulness. He learned how the mind produces emotion like clouds produce rain, naturally, but not uncontrollably. He practiced breathing when anger came. He sat in silence before replying to messages that once would have triggered him. At first, it felt strange, even weak. But slowly, it felt powerful. Michael began to notice something, Buddha said. When he stopped reacting, others started responding. His friends felt safe around him. His family grew closer. His coworkers admired him. Not because he never felt anger, but because he no longer became it. The young man raised his eyes. He changed? Buddha smiled. Yes. But more importantly, he understood. Emotional mastery isn't about being emotionless, it's about being unshaken. Like a mountain touched by the wind, but never moved by it. Wonderful. Here is the final part of the cinematic and inspirational story. Power of not reacting, how to control your emotions. The forest shimmered in golden light as Buddha's words drifted through the air like incense. The young man sat quietly, absorbing everything, not just with his ears, but with his breath, his body, his soul. For the first time in his life, he felt something shift inside him. Not a dramatic surge. Just space. Stillness. Master, he asked softly, how do I begin this practice? When the anger comes, when someone insults me, what should I do? Buddha looked at him with deep, patient eyes. First, breathe, he said. Let the breath become your anchor. Not to run away from the feeling, but to meet it without judgment. He picked up a small pebble and dropped it into a pool of water nearby. Ripples spread slowly. Emotions are like this ripple. If you don't disturb it, it fades. But if you react, it stirs more. But what if I fail? The young man asked. What if I react again? You will, Buddha said gently. Even Michael did. Even I did, once. The practice is not to be perfect. The practice is to return. Again and again. He leaned forward. When someone throws a hot coal at you, do you catch it? The young man shook his head. No, master. Then why catch anger? Why catch insult? Why catch every hurtful word and hold it? The young man exhaled, as if releasing something old. And what happens, he asked, when I no longer react? You stop being controlled by the world, Buddha said. You start responding from your truth, not to their chaos. You become like the deep ocean, waves may rise above, but below is calm. The trees swayed in silent applause. The world needs fewer reactors, Buddha said. And more reflectors. Fewer flames. More lamps. The young man bowed deeply. He rose from the grove lighter than he had arrived, not because his problems were gone, but because now, he wasn't adding to them. And as he stepped onto the path home, he carried with him a new mantra, not carved in stone, but etched in presence. I don't have to react. I can respond. And in that space, I am free.